All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Forge Your Life podcast. Here with your host, Richard Fu from richardfu.com. And today, guys, I have a really big superstar on here and I get excited because he's pretty much my point B. When I say my point B, one of my friends here in Singapore, when he got the chance to meet up with this guy, he said, after the meeting, he came back and he said to me, Richard, I just met with the guy that you want to be at. And I was kind of excited, like, who is this guy? And, as a typical systemizer like I am, I did not hear a word about him. I didn't know anything about him, but I checked him out, and his name is Monty Hooke. And he is the ultimate systemizer guy. He is the freedompreneur. He's the founder of Ezy VA. And what excites me about talking to Monty here and getting him on the show is that we're going to crack open the nuts and bolts of really why it's important for any small business owner to start systemizing so that they can live a free life. But enough about me, guys. Enough about that. Let's bring him onto the show. Monty, welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you very much, Richard. Awesome to be here. Thanks so much for having me. So as I mentioned, I've been a bit quiet for the last few months and I haven't done any interviews or podcasts or anything. So, mate, thanks for having me.
Mate, hopefully this sparks something out there and then everyone comes rushing in on your door and you just be having to take these podcast calls on the beach soon, huh?
Cool.
And so, Monty, tell us about your story. I mean, like, how did you get to where you're at right now? I mean, like, and now how are you helping, I guess, small business owners scale up and systemize their own businesses, mate?
Yeah, so look, my story is probably a little bit different to most people. A lot of people in the entrepreneurial space that, we know, they've been through school, university, got themselves a job, hated the job, went down the road of, becoming an entrepreneur. I'm the opposite. I've never even had a job. I had my first business when I was 8. I grew up in Sydney Harbour. We were, pretty poor family. I actually grew up on a boat. So just from a young age, I was a real hustler. I was, had to figure out for myself how to make money. And so it's just always kind of been in my DNA. And then through my 20s, I had a range of different businesses and most of them failed. And coming out of that in 2008, that's when the global financial crisis hit and wiped me out. I ended up about $100,000 in the hole in debt, with no job, no anything. I got out of it pretty lightly. A lot of people ended up much worse than me. But that was, a bit of a tipping point for me in terms of, the direction that I started to head. And that's where I figured out I'm actually really passionate about, really mastering this thing called business. And that kind of set me out in the direction of being a coach, a consultant, a mentor. And through that journey, I started outsourcing a lot of things. And, I became really, really passionate about leverage. I just became fascinated by it. I did a lot of research and, I've written a lot of IP and I've, written books. And now I guess where I'm at in my journey is I've even grown that business almost beyond myself. And now I'm helping other people set up outsourcing businesses. So, look, I'm really, really passionate more than anything about helping businesses to put the infrastructure in place, to understand, deconstruct their business so that they can understand what their part is, what parts are missing, and how to, plug teams and, the right systems in place to help them scale. So.
Oh man, awesome. And I know you flash forward through your whole life there for a second. And so I want to pull it back here and talk us through this. I mean, talk us through the point in your life where you're running your businesses and then you realize, you know what, I actually have to start leveraging. I have to start getting myself out of this because it's crazy for me to spend, 15, 20 hours a day in my own business.
Yeah. Yeah, look, back before 2008, between 2003, 2004 and 2008, I had a business in the auto parts industry, right? And I just kind of fell into that. I didn't have any real passion for that industry. I'm not the kind of guy that, fixes engines and that kind of thing. Of course, I like fast cars like any guy, but I wasn't real passionate about it. And I built this business. I had a couple of staff, but I always hit the ceiling. There was just this ceiling that I couldn't push past. And it was kind of frustrating because maybe you can tell by the way I talk, I'm like a million miles an hour. And it's one of these guys that, needs to succeed. And it was just kind of always frustrating. We're just always hitting that, not knowing how to push past that. And I didn't figure it out. I didn't figure it out until I lost that business and I ended up, going into debt and going in a hole. And then I took some time out and I just really reflected. And what I really reflected on was what was I good at and what was I not good at. And what I figured out was that in that business, I was doing everything. It was all departments and I had to, be everybody in the business. And this is, the nature of, entrepreneurship and starting out, and everybody experiences this. But most of us actually get stuck there, right? It's a very easy place to get stuck. And I had gotten stuck there, and I just hadn't realized it. And I didn't have people around me. I wasn't, going to seminars, and I wasn't doing personal development, wasn't doing all that stuff at the time. So I didn't have people around me telling me, giving me advice. And that was probably one of my biggest errors is not having a mentor and not learning. What was your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, so then you sound like you hit that wall, and then you're like, hang on a second, I can't be doing it all. I can't be doing it all. And then you start recognizing what is the one thing you're really good at and not good at.
So what I figured out I was really good at was actually business planning and coming up with the ideas and kind of driving the vision. And I would start the thing, I'd put that department in place and I'd start this thing, but then I'd end up getting stuck running that, right? Because I didn't put the people in place. What I figured out that I'm really good at in wealth dynamics, I don't know, a few people are probably familiar. I'm a creator. And what I really, really, truly believe is that people should really get to the nuts and bolts of understanding and be really honest to yourself about what you're actually really good at. Because a lot of people have this arrogance about what they think they're good at. And actually, quite often, when I'm working with other business owners, what we kind of get to the root of is that what people think they're good at, they're actually not that good at, right? So, it's about having that real honesty and, removing your ego out of the way to say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not good at.
Wow, huge, man. And I know that the wealth dynamics formula, or the method that you're talking about here, is that there's the creator, which is the typical entrepreneur, right? It's just likes to create stuff and produce stuff. And then there's, I think, is it in that one that they have the mechanic as well?
Yep.
Yeah, which is pretty much the systemizing guy. And then, so talk us about this. I mean, like, how did you go from like being the creator to just, all right, I'm going to go into and being the mechanic and helping other people show them how to actually have basically have a mechanic in their own business? Yeah.
So look, I mean, I am a creator, but I'm very heavy on the mechanic side. So mechanic is there right next to creator. So I am a systems person. However, in the start, when I was first starting out, in entrepreneurship, I was trying to be the star. I was out there trying to meet people, out doing networking and, doing all that. Because when you're starting out in entrepreneurship, you kind of get told, you got to speak, you got to go to do speaking engagements, you got to go do networking, you got to do all this stuff. I hated all that stuff, right? I'm a good speaker, and I actually enjoy it when I do it, but I don't go chasing it. So I just always had this understanding of systems, and I'm really fascinated by data. I really truly believe that, if you look at the financials of the last year and what's kind of happened and look for the patterns, like what happened in this month, why was there a spike here, and really what did we do differently in this month, and understand what took that worked there. I truly believe that if you look at data, you can get a lot of value for how to move forward, because then it's not about what other people are telling you. It's about, what's actually happening in the business, where you're having successes, where you're having failures. Like when it comes to me working inside other businesses, it is very, very common that people set up businesses and they're very good with people, right? Because it's normally the kind of people who start businesses are the ones who are adverse. They're fine with risk, right? They're happy to put themselves out there. They're good people, they're good with people, etc., but not so good on the systems, right? So it's very, very important that people, especially as you're starting to scale, because you've got to figure out what works, and then you've got to have a mechanism for repeating that and plugging other people in place. So you cannot plug somebody into a system that doesn't exist, right? If you're going to have success in your business, you've got to understand what you're plugging people into, rather than just say, hey, come and help me in my business. I don't know what you're helping me with. Just figure it out, right? And this is the nature of how a lot of people are running their businesses, right? If you can identify and clearly map out what are the processes, what are the systems, and then you plug people into that, you're going to have a far, far better success in scaling.
Oh, man. And I want to distill this, man, because you mentioned something in that I think it needs to be brought up, is that you need to have a process that's proven and that it's working. And this is the exact time where people should systemize is when you've done it and it's working, and then it's time to, like, Chris Duncan and I say, is like, and is to build that boring business so you can have a fun life. When we say boring business, it's what you said is predictable results in day out.
Yeah, and look, and when it comes to recruiting people or putting people into your business, there's two ways you can go about it, right? You can either put people into your systems, right? Or you bring people in as partners who are the ones to create the systems, right? But don't just bring people into your business and say, hey, figure stuff out. Either you bring a systems person in and you partner up with them, right? And the two of you kind of work together, and you come up with the ideas and they systemize it, then you plug people into that. But to plug workers into something that doesn't a non-existing system, then it certainly doesn't work.
Yeah, and then that's where all that time is wasted in training people. That's all where the resources and the money goes down the drain, because then they're not actually learning, and all the knowledge sits up in here, right, in their head.
Yeah, and this is the world of, people come to us looking for virtual assistants, right? It's like, I need a virtual assistant to help me in my business. And the first thing I ask is, great, what are you plugging them into? What's the system? What are they working off? I'm like, oh, I don't have that yet. I'm like, well, go away, figure it out, and then come back to us. Not to be rude, but a VA, a virtual assistant, is certainly not going to be able to help you in your business when you don't know what you're putting them into. Just because you need help with your marketing, or you need help with your lead generation, it's not good enough. You've got to work out what that system is, what that process is.
Exactly. So true, man. So true. And then tell me about this. I mean, Monty, so you've gone out, you started helping people systemize their businesses, started helping them outsource it. And then what made you decide, like in my mind, I'm sitting here as a businessman, and I'm like, why would you want to go out and help other people set up outsourcing companies? Right? And wouldn't that be competing with what you have at the moment? I mean, what was the trigger that made you switch and go, you know what, this is what I want to do now?
It's probably more than anything just an elevation of my own life, right? And that is what most people do is they start a business, and even if you have a successful business, you're still in that business, right? It's very, very rare that people create a business and then they can completely step out of that, and then that business continues running on its own without them, right? It's a very, very rare thing to do. I'm so fascinated by leverage that in the business that I have, which is the outsourcing business, Ezy VA is the original outsourcing business, right? And it's just the case that if I continue, that's a successful business. But as long as I stay in there, then I'm not as leveraged as I can ever be, right? And I feel like I have achieved that level that I want, right? And I think I believe there's an escalation process for people. There's an ascension for people that they need to go through. That you kind of go through levels in your life. You go through levels in your business, and you master one, and then you move to the next. So in terms of what where I'm moving myself to, I truly believe that the most impact that I can have as a business advisor, a mentor, or whatever, and the value that I can bring is not so much in my business and just running one business. It's by helping other businesses to succeed. Now, the model that I have is that I have the company in the Philippines, which is a BPO. We've got staff here. And what we now do is I now partner up with other businesses who set up an outsourcing solution. And all the staff are running through the Philippines. So that's still growing my business, but without they're doing everything client facing. So all I now have to do is I have to help them grow their business, and then that feeds my business in the Philippines. So that's just that's scaling, at its best, I guess. So.
Oh, wow. Now I see the picture, Monty. Now it's like you're helping them build out their own outsourcing business. And basically, in a other senses, then they're connecting, and you're supplying them with the VA.
That's correct. We're the source of the staff for them, because we've nailed that, right? We do a brilliant job in the Philippines. I'm being biased, of course, but I've got a really good COO in place and operations manager, and we do a brilliant job of that. And so I'm confident that we can support those businesses. So.
Oh, wow, man, that's a brilliant model. Now I'm sitting here and going, okay, now it makes sense, man. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, but that's part of it. That's one string in the bow, and then I've got a software which supports the industry and supports all them and their clients, and so there's a few kind of elements, and it's kind of like you know, the Elon Musk master plan with the Tesla cars, right?
Mm.
So 10 years ago, they brought out, you know, the low volume, expensive car, right, to kind of test the market. And then they brought out the mid-level, mid-volume, mid-price one, and, you know, they start scaling it. And then just this year, they've, you know, released the cheaper one, which is only 45 grand or whatever, high volume, not delivered for 2 years. And that's kind of like the master plan, right? Yeah. And to have that master plan, you've got to have this, it's a long-term vision, right? So those cars aren't even being released for 2 years. But you kind of got to go through this ascension, and then the big picture, the long big picture, it's a long-term thing. And that's probably one of the learnings for me in business, is kind of moving from a short-term focus to nailing that, and then moving to a mid-term focus, nailing that, and then being able to, you know, to focus on a long-term vision.
Nice, man. Nice. And so where you're at now, do you think you're at the midterm, or still at the short term, or now in the long term, man?
Far from the short term. Moving from the mid to the long. I'm kind of in the midst of that, because yeah. So, and it's the same in business, right? If you think about marketing, when you're starting out in business, what I tell people is the only thing you should be focused on is your cash flow, right? You should just be trying to put money in the bank. That's the only thing you should be focused on. Yeah. And so many people focus on, you know, I'm going to putting their long-term, you know, marketing plans together and stuff. It's like, fucking stop it. Just focus on putting money in the bank, nail that, and then move to the next level.
Nice. And then so let's talk about that. I mean, rewinding back to for startups, they're focusing on cash flow. Then when's the moment you think that someone who's running a startup or a small business should go, you know what, it's time I actually go and systemize this and get someone else in?
So when you're making enough money that you can look, it's a catch-22, right? Because it's like you make enough money, but then you've got to then put people in place and systems in place, and you've got to spend that money, right? Yeah. And then it's kind of at that point you got to make a decision what kind of life you want, right? Because if you could be comfortable in that space, you could make 250 grand a year on your own, and you have like a part-time VA, and that's it, right? You don't have any other responsibilities of growing this massive thing and having these people to pay, and you've got to make a decision for yourself which way you want to go. Because if you go down the path of building a business, it gets messy, right? It's going to get messy. And what happens is you go from making money, and then you're going to be, all of a sudden you're going to be not making money, right? And you've got to make a conscious choice to do that, knowing that you're going to come out the other side somewhere. Yeah. So it's more than anything, it's a decision of what you actually want for your life. Because if you're going to go down an entrepreneurial path, it's a tough one. But what I would say is definitely master the cash flow. Like, make sure you got enough money in the bank that, you know, you can then start paying somebody else to help you. And then if you've got to understand, but you've got to understand what your return on investment is for everything that you spend, right? So if you're going to put somebody in place, then you've got to understand that, all right, well, that's going to cost me, I'm just going to pull figures out of my head, that's going to cost me $50,000, right? You've got to understand, if I'm going to spend that $50,000, where am I getting my return on investment for that? And that has to be back on you and your time. So if you are not spending your time to put more than $50,000 back in the bank, right, then it's not a worthwhile investment. So what you should be doing at every stage is looking at how can you, what I call just clearing your plate, right? So if you clear your plate, if you look at clearing 10% off your plate of low value activities, and then you might have to spend some money on that, right? And then what you fill your plate with, what you replace it with, is something more high value. And then you make more money for that. As long as you're always going through that process of clearing your plate with low value, filling it with high value, that's how you scale. That's all you got to do. But you got to know at every one of those points, I'm spending money. What's my return on investment? You got to know what that is.
I love it. And I love the plate methodology that you're using here, because it paints a real big picture here. And so, you know, Monty, it hurts me, man, that we got to start wrapping up the show here. Yeah. And as we start wrapping up, we're going to go into our quickfire question rounds. Yeah. And we're going to start off with my favorite question, and that is the time travel moment. And when we're going to go into the time travel moment, we're going to talk about, if you could go back, Monty, to any time back when in your life, and you could give yourself one piece of advice, when would you go back to, and what would you tell yourself? And it looks like we've lost Monty here with our internet connection, guys. I'm going to give it some time, see if it comes back. Hey, Monty, you're back.
Hello.
Hey, Monty, you're back, man.
Yes. Sorry, man. Don't know what happened there.
It's all right. So we'll wrap up here. I'll go back into it. So we're in a quick fire question round, man. And so, Monty, one of our signature questions here we have on this show is what we call the time travel moment. If you could go back to any moment in your life and speak to little Monty and give him a piece of advice that you know today, when would you go back to, and what would you tell him?
Honestly, the best thing I could... one thing is definitely don't give a fuck what other people say. That's probably that's probably the biggest thing, because as human beings, that's probably the biggest thing that holds us back, right? Even if it's unconscious and we don't think we're doing it, it's what stops us from taking action is being scared of what other people are going to think of us. That's probably the biggest thing. And at the end of the day, you get results through action, right? And you get results through playing the long game, right? And probably the other thing is to be patient, right? Is to be patient, because we live in this world of instant gratification, and there's just so much glorification around being an entrepreneur and starting a business, and so many programs which will teach you how to make $962,322 in 19 minutes. Mm-hmm. And it's all bullshit, right? You've got to play the long game, and you've got to be prepared, and you've got to be patient.
Oh, awesome, man. Awesome. Next question I have for you, Monty, is, if anyone's thinking about systemizing, and I'm sure you've read a lot of books and studied a lot in terms of that, what is the one book you would recommend to anyone who's listening here who wants to be better at systemizing their business?
Look, I don't know if it's so much about systemizing, but probably look, the E-Myth. The E-Myth is probably like the fundamental book around how to think about your business and how to structure it, and the importance of systems. And that's probably the foundational book. That would, if you could ask me for a favorite book, that would be it.
Awesome, man. We'll add that into the show notes. And the last question I have for you here, Monty, is, we talk a lot about, the lifestyle that you want to create, the way you want to live your life. And so how would you describe what does true wealth really mean to you?
Yeah. Good question. You know what? I think there's a journey for everybody, and at different parts of your journey, what's important to you is different. But I think true wealth and true happiness comes down to the impact and the contribution that you can make. What's the value that you bring? What's the footprint that you can leave? Because so many of us, it's just so normal that we just chase money, right? And then that's not what's going to be important. When you're on your deathbed, what's going to be important is, the people around you and the impact and the value that you've made. So if you can weave that into your business and what you do, and your passion, then, I truly believe that's probably true wealth and happiness.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And so, Monty, as we wrap up the show here, man, was there any other final words you want to add in that we didn't get a chance to talk about here on the show?
No, no, I don't think so. You know, like probably one of the biggest things that I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, right? I had my first business when I was 8. And at the end of the day, look, I'm late 30s now, and probably the most important thing at the end of all of it is happiness, you know. So the thing that I'm kind of really going back to now is the books that I'm reading and the things I'm learning is all about mindfulness and happiness. And because I truly believe that if you have that in your life, you know, don't chase money's not going to buy happiness, right? We all kind of know that. Chase happiness, and then money will follow you, right? That's one of the other things that I wish I'd kind of learned a long time ago.
Wow, awesome advice, man. And Monty, man, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show here. If people want to get connected with you and your work, man, where's the best place they should head to?
Yeah, look, my website, www.monty, M-O-N-T-Y-G, Hooke, H-O-O-K-E.com. Yeah, go check me out. There's a free ebook there talking about leverage and scaling. And just connect with me on Facebook. I'm not selling anybody anything. Just connect with me on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to getting to know everybody.
Awesome, man. Pleasure to have you on the show, Monty. Thank you again, man, for your time.
Thank you very much, Richard. Much appreciated.
Awesome, guys. So this wraps up another episode of the For July podcast here today with Monty G. Hooke, the systemization master here. And so, guys, I know this. I know Monty doesn't want to keep this a secret. I don't want to keep this a secret. This must go out there so other people hear about his message and all the other people who we've had on the show here too. So make sure you head on iTunes to rate the show. And of course, you can go over to richardfu.com to grab the show notes and resources that Monty has shared here. And finally, guys, go out there, go live with love, go smash it. And I'll see you again on the next one.